Well, here we are, August 30th. Basically, end of the summer update here. You can see the soybeans here behind me. This section of them is drying out quite fast. But yeah, they look really good. Not a single weed in any of the beans hardly. Some of my other beans at the farm, they're really weedy. But these ones, they're pretty much 100% weed free and waist high, the whole field. So it looks great. The corn, we had some issues with some root lodging. I'll show you that coming up here. But yeah, I'll start with the beans. There's a little bit of a hill here. It's a little drier ground than what there is down there. That's just the vegetable garden area right there. But you can see these beans are clearly healthier looking, not as dried out as these ones right up here. The ground just dries out a little bit more. But they're pretty much, all their pods are pretty much filled in. Maybe if we got a little bit more rain this year, they would have grown a few more pods at the top at the end of the season like this. But I'll have to pull a plant out here and pull one out down there and maybe pull one out over in the no-till plot and kind of compare and count how many pods there are on each one. But yeah, it looks pretty good. This was all corn last year. And this is the second, well, third year we've had something in this ground. But this right here, that's the first year we've had anything there. You can see they're pretty dry there, but then they're actually better there. It's kind of weird. Like I said, first year we've ever had anything here. I sprayed off the grass when it was short like this in the spring. Sprayed it off. Once it died off good, we ran the disc through here once just to kind of knife some slits in the ground. And then I just broadcast and kind of hand drilled a few and then packed it all in. It worked out pretty good. I did that same thing in that area last year when that was all new ground. And then here's the no-till beans. I'll show you these ones quick in between the tree rows. This was all standing rye that I broadcasted the soybeans into and crushed it all down. These turned out pretty good. Down here they're a little shorter. But you can see they're pretty well filled up with pods. You can see all the rye right here. They were quite small for a while. They were quite a bit behind the tilled areas, but they did catch up. Maybe not quite as many pods, but it was, like I said, such a dry year. Right after we planted these, they didn't get hardly any rain. So I'll take you down to the ones down more in the garden there now. These beans way down here in the kind of in the valley. There's a slight hill going up that way and a steep hill going up that way. This is definitely the most moist ground in our property, and these beans haven't showed signs of drought this whole summer, and this has been a pretty wet, pretty dry summer. You can tell these ones are a little bit taller than the ones where I was just at. I'll go in here and pluck one off and count how many pods there are. See, they're definitely over waist high, almost chest high. Okay, I counted 57 pods on here. You can tell these plants, they're not super thin. I got a pretty good population here, so that's why you can tell it's a pretty, straight up plant. If it was a little thinner population, you'd see more branching, and this thing would probably have closer to 100, but then there would be less plants per acre as well. So I'll go up there and count one of those plants. It would probably be pretty similar. You can tell that these beans here are definitely noticeably shorter. They're actually starting to turn yellow a little bit because it's been so dry. They're really drying up fast. Alright, so I counted 50 pods on here, exactly 50 pods. This was just a random plant from a little bit in. So about down there was 57 and they were about this tall, and here we got 50 and they're a little bit shorter. So yeah, not really that big of a difference. That's why tall beans don't mean high yield usually. It just kind of depends on the variety, I guess. These might be taller variety of beans because in the right conditions, normally beans, I've seen other beans that only get this tall. But anyways, this stuff produced pretty good. I know I fertilized, this is the first year I fertilized here in our backyard, and it really didn't make much of a difference because I think I counted last year or the year before, it was 51 or 52 pods down there in the garden. So I might have helped a little bit, but fertilizing is important, but you can overdo it. I probably did overdo it and probably did fertilize more than I needed to. But yeah, it's produced really good beans this year. So I'll take you over to the no-till spot quick. To give the no-till beans a chance, I came up here where they look the best. You can tell that these pods are a little bit flatter, they're a little bit behind, but there is still quite a few on here. We'll see. We got 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright, so I counted 51 pods on here actually. So that's one more than what there was in that dry section of ground where the beans are drying up. Those beans in that dry area, they were shriveled up like that once or twice throughout the summer, and for probably one period of time they looked pretty dry for over a week. That was probably late June. But anyways, these beans up here in the no-till section, they never dried out at all. Anyways, 51 pods. They're a little bit behind, a little flatter pods because they were planted a little bit later. The stem is a little thinner too than what they were down there. But yeah, they were probably planted at least 2 weeks after the other spot, and they didn't germinate until those ones were about shin high. Those ones were quite a bit ahead of these ones. So yeah, I'll take you down to the corn next. These ones I'm assuming are around 50 as well. These were planted a little bit after those too, but pretty much the same time as these, but these ones came up first because they were in the ground a little bit. We're going down there next for the corn. Okay, down here by the corn now. These outside rows look really good. Super nice sized ears. Each plant has about 2 of them on this outside row here. But once you get in there, each plant only has about 1 ear, and they're a little bit smaller. And this is silage corn, not field corn. My dad accidentally bought silage corn seed, but it turned out way better than what I thought it was going to turn out. I didn't know how big of, I didn't think silage corn could grow good sized ears, because on the bag it said not for grain, grain production. I'm trying to grow grain for the winter, but it grew fine. I might actually plant some of this in the future because I like how thick it ran. The seeds were a little smaller than the field corn seeds we've bought in the past, and it ran it through the planter a little bit better and a little bit thicker than we have in the past. So I like the way it planted, but it did plant a little bit too thick because I planted a lot of this field double planted with our planter, because in the past that's what I've had to do because our planter plates are a little bit small, I think, for some of the seeds, or the seeds are a little bit big. But with the silage corn being smaller seed, it ran through the planter a little bit higher population than it probably should have. So we had some corn get root lodged and completely flattened in some of those heavy storms in middle of July. That's just on the other side of this really good stuff. But yeah, I'll take you in here. This stuff is probably 12 feet tall at the tops of these tassels because it's silage corn. Looking up, this is head level for me, and I'm like 6'2". These ears, right, the tops of the ears are right at my eye level. Some of them are higher. Like, look at this one. That thing's probably like close to 6'6" or 6'8" at the top of this ear. these deer might have a hard time eating these. I know this silage corn is known to flop down when it dries down, so maybe when it flops down, it might be a little bit lower, but we might have to brush hog some of this stuff if the deer are going to get at it. But I guess when there's a foot or two of snow on the ground, that'll make the deer taller too. Take you out to the messed up spot here. Here we are. What a disaster. This stuff was completely leveled back in middle of July when we had probably like 3 inches of rain in one day. The ground down here is clay. Like I said, it holds its moisture really good. The ground was completely saturated, and the next night we had some pretty strong winds, I think like 60 to 70 mile per hour winds. And this ground being completely saturated and this corn being planted thicker than it probably should have been, it didn't have any brace roots in the ground yet, so there was nothing really holding this. This stuff was at least 10 feet at the time. It was just starting to tassel out, and the ears were just starting to form, and it basically just tipped it right over. And the day after it happened, it was completely leveled, and it sprung back up pretty good. It's all about waist high. You can see all the tassels, and this corn is basically just growing sideways. You can see it produced pretty good. Right here's an ear. Right here's some smaller ears right here. And the coons have been eating down here on this stuff laying on the ground. They've definitely avoided the tall stuff. We've had some coon damage in here, but not a ton. And right here's a cob that's been opened up. And here's another one. But you can see the stuff on the ground here. When it was laying sideways on the ground like this, I wasn't sure how good of pollination we'd get. That's what I was kind of scared of. You know, pollination is when the stuff on the tassels falls down and it hits the top of the silks on the ears. And it looks like we got pretty good pollination even for laying sideways like that. Let me just pluck off one of these smaller ones. I think it definitely did hurt the yield for sure, because there's a lot bigger ears in there. That was probably like one of the nicer ones down here where it's leveled. A lot of this stuff is pretty small. Like right here's one I can just feel we didn't get the best. Yeah, this is what I'm talking about right here. I'm sure there's a few down here like this. See that? That's poor pollination. That's because the silks were probably covered up by leaves and they didn't get any pollination from the tassels. Right here's another little one, but this one feels better. I'm gonna open this one up. Yeah, here we are, same scenario. But there is still some grain on there, but not nearly as much as what there could have been if it was standing. So we did get a yield loss down here. I was half tempted to mow it all up and disc it all up and put in brassicas, but these ones on the top, you can see that's a fully filled in ear. Pretty good size, pretty good, definitely good pollination on that one, because you can see where his tassel is. The stuff was dropping down and hitting right where it needed to be. But some of these ones that are completely buried, like this one, he's buried a little bit more. I can feel there's some emptiness. And right here too, this one, let's see how bad this one looks way down under there. Yeah, horrendous. Look at that. That's because that one was wedged way underneath there and didn't get any pollination. But some of these ones up here on the top, here's another one. We'll check. Sorry for the poor camera angles, but it's hard to do this when you're by yourself. This a little better, but you can see it definitely didn't fill out a lot of this ear. So basically everything on the top like this, the plants that are standing up the best still have full-size ears like this. Looks really good. And these are the ones the coons are eating too, these full-size ones right on the top. Check another one here for you. Pretty good. That's all coon damage that would have been filled in too. But yeah, I mean, it's not a total loss. It did kind of upset me quite a bit. I was really hoping to have this corn here and, you know, have more food than we've ever had in our backyard, because we only have a little bit over 3/4 of an acre to plant. This year, my rough calculations were right around a 1/2 acre of soybeans. It's probably closer to a 1/3 acre. I was splitting it half and half. We probably have almost 1/3 of an acre of corn and probably a little bit more than 1/3 of an acre of soybeans. Soybeans down in the garden are over there, and you wrap up through there, and the rest of them are all that way. And then the house is right up there. And this was all corn right down here. I'll show you some drone. There'll be some drone footage at the end of this. My cousin Cole took some really cool drone shots. That would have been last weekend. I'll have that footage all at the end of the video. Kind of, you can really see where the corn's messed up from the air, and just get a good layout of where the corn and beans are. But yeah, right here's another one. There's a lot of coon damage down here actually. I'll be coming out with another video as well of this root lodging, showing more footage of it right after it happened, when it was completely leveled, and like a few days after and a few days after. The first week or so, you could really see it spring back up. I didn't know how good it was going to recover, and once it started popping back up, I knew I was going to leave it, you know, for the whole year instead of planting brassicas into it. And then right here you can see some of the standing stuff. Every ear is pretty good sized, good pollination I can feel. And like I said, about 12 feet tall. So yeah, it's a little bit of a bummer that it had to happen like this. Now that these plants are out in the open like this, got 2 really nice ears. That would have never happened if it was all standing still. Just both these plants would have had only one. But yeah, there's a good amount of corn in here. Having it crushed down like this, I was starting to think maybe that's a good thing, because then the deer are really gonna have to search for it. But once it gets under the snow, it's gonna be kind of hard for them to get to. I can guarantee you the standing stuff will be gone before this stuff. That's my guess right now. As long as the coons don't eat all this low stuff up. The coons are really gnawing at all this stuff right in the ground, but I mean, you really got to search for it. I don't think the deer are gonna walk through here at all. This is kind of a maze. Like, it's kind of just a big fish net. It's hard to walk through this crushed down stuff. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. You'll see this plot sometime this winter in the next update of these plots. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I guess I'll take you into the standing stuff one more time before it ends here. I was really happy with how this stuff grew, but as soon as it got crushed, it kind of made me think, what could I do better? So next year, if I ever plant corn down here again, it's definitely not going to be silage corn, because I want a short variety that won't get root lodged as easily. I'm definitely not going to plant it this thick. You can see we probably have about a 20-inch row, probably like honestly like a 12-inch row. On a 20-inch row, you can see I got these plants. I mean, they're not too thick in the row. The rows, the seeding rate in the row is fine, but the rows are just definitely too tight. Only good thing about planting tight rows like this is you get no weeds. Look at this. This is probably the most weed-free corn I've ever grown. Just little tiny weeds down here, that's it. But I gotta admit though, this corn grew really good for being planted quite a bit thicker than a lot of farmers' fields in the area. Its ears are pretty much the same size. I mean, I did fertilize this pretty heavy, and it's definitely showing, because corn planted this thick shouldn't probably yield this high. I mean, this is This corn never showed signs of stress, of drought this whole summer, even when it was super dry. We haven't had rain or substantial rain for over a week, and you can still see that this soil is damp at the surface level. So can you imagine just an inch down, this whole field is still very, got plenty of moisture. These ears are really tall. Right up here on the edge is the only area that was definitely extremely too thick. But for some reason, I think it's drier ground here, so it didn't tip these plants over. These were kind of the headland rows right here. You can see how thick this is. All those stems, look at how thick this is. And this stuff still did produce. These ears are a little smaller than the rest, but they're about as big as my hand. This one's a little smaller. That one's really small. But I double planted these headland rows just to kind of, make it nice and thick at the edge. Because looking from the outside here, you can see how thick that is. Definitely planted a little too thick, but it all turned out. We still got a good amount of food here. So thanks for watching. The next time you'll see these plats will be probably late December, early January. We'll see how much corn we have left by then. I'm sure those beans out by the no-till spots closer to the road, that'll probably be the last food available. Those beans right up there were the last available food last year, and that's pretty much right where I found one of the sheds, right up that way close to the road. So yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. There'll be more corn and soybean updates like this coming out. Not here, obviously. I got 2 other spots at the farm and at my dad's buddy's place where we have corn and soybean food plots. Those will be the next updates coming. Cole's video will be right after this.